Hello and welcome to When I Stop Fighting podcast, hosted by Daryl Dittman, where we talk about the fight or fights that so many of us engage in this lifetime, as well as ways to potentially relieve ourselves of those fights. Let's get started. Welcome to When I Stop Fighting, the podcast. My name is Daryl Dittmer. And today I'm joined by Dr. Robert Beare, a dad, psychologist, best-selling author, artist, and a long-term sober human being. Welcome, Bob. Thanks so much for joining me.
Hey, Daryl. All right. Did we get formal suddenly? Did I turn into Robert?
I don't know why the hell that came out of my mouth, honestly. We're going to go with Bob. We'll just go.
I thought my mother was in the house. Robert Kenneth Beare, you get in here.
That's great. Yeah, that was, I don't know why I said that, but for whatever reason, it got stuck into my melon and that's the way it came out. So again, thanks for joining me. I'm excited to, we've interacted a little bit. I know we both, put you put several books on the street. I have one under my belt at this point, but we sort of met through that process, and I was very happy to meet you and know that you're another sober guy and a long-term sober guy, which is really cool. I always love meeting friends of Bill. So if you would, I'd love to just start off with, your story and what brought you to sobriety, and we'll just go from there.
Yeah. Why not? Why not start with the train wreck, right? If you have a podcast here. I'm a theater guy, so I've learned two things: have a good beginning and have a good ending, and then everything in between can be horse shit. And they'll go away saying, "Geez, that was good," and they'll forget those 2 hours of boring sitting around. But the train wreck that woke me up, I'll start with that, which was in the late 90s. Anyway, the train wreck. I would say, how those of us in recovery, we like to say that, well, my root addiction, my bottom line addiction is this one. I don't know. I've given up saying that. I can't figure out which one it is. The good news is I know a lot about 12-step recovery. And the bad news is I know a lot about 12-step recovery. It's due to many train wrecks and trying to find something that would sufficiently medicate that pain, that nervousness, that restless, irritable, discontent place in me that is always there and has turned into death-defying moments. The biggest one was around love addiction. That's actually one of the under-acknowledged addictions, right? We say, yeah, he's in love. Yeah. Oh, he was pretty depressed afterward. Yeah. And then he killed himself. Yeah. What? He killed himself. Doesn't that sound like addiction to you? There's so many suicides, and there's research on it that 80%, I can send that to you sometime. To me, I don't research a lot of stuff, but that one was interesting to me. That 80% of the people that survived a serious suicide attempt had some kind of romantic breakup behind it.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah. Doesn't that sound like there might be something addictive going on?
Yeah. There's
so
a rotten egg in that hen house for sure.
I pushed my first marriage away, a great person who often I've had that, man, I should have stayed with that one over and over. But I pushed her away enough times until she actually did go away. Mm. And one of the jokes that I tell is, when they're married to someone else, it's probably over. So that's when the intense pain wake up started, and that it was at the beginning of the men's movement. I don't know. I think you're probably slightly younger than me. I don't know if you were around in the days when Robert Bly and those guys were doing the healing work.
58.
Yeah, I want to. Yeah. but I happened to get sober and start doing the work when that stuff was just becoming a thing for men.
Mm.
The women's movement was, we're not going to take this shit anymore. And then the men's movement was, holy shit, I better look inside here. I think it's
Mm.
time to start looking within. And I happened to be cracked wide open during that period. So that's where it started, man. And then, it was a year later before I got sober. Actually, I wasn't drinking for that year, but I thought the alcoholics were the very worst. Oh my God. I mean, I have a family story behind that about why that was true, but I was more comfortable saying I had sexual problems and that kind of thing than being an alcoholic. But eventually I got on that train too, and I've been doing the healing work ever since. Daryl, thanks for asking.
Yeah, no, that's great. And that's a question I've asked myself that I don't know. I just actually had a discussion with a friend of mine from college, and there's so many things we can interact, and we can see each other on Twitter and X and all that sort of stuff, but we have no idea. We have no idea of the stories. We have no idea what's really going on, and I love diving into to that. And one of the things I've wondered is, as you and I have interacted a little bit over the course of, I guess, probably the last year plus, what as far as the PhD and helping people with healing and that sort of thing, how did that come about? How did that get to the point where you decided that that's the way you wanted to go?
Yeah. Well, I was a year into AA, so I guess 2 years into sobriety and doing this work. And this old timer in a meeting, I think I was bragging a little bit that I was in school to be a therapist. And after the meeting, he said, "Yep, all you new guys want to save the world, don't you?" Oh man, let's see. I don't think I have a resentment anymore, but I carried a resentment about that for a while. But there was some truth in it, and I think there's some truth in the healing world. I don't know if you're in the healing world that much. I don't think you're a therapist type, right?
I'm not. No.
No. But you have a lot of wisdom. I've read a lot of your stuff.
Thank you.
There's being a therapist doesn't necessarily equate to having done much work. That's a whole nother podcast. But yeah, I think in the beginning I was just really interested in this stuff, and when I got sober, I was awake enough, like many of us do. Our creativity comes forward. I remembered that I was a theater guy and a musician, and I went back and finished my degree in music. And then I was at this crossroads, right? What am I going to do now? So whenever my life has gone to shit, I've always gone back to school. So I was either going to, do a musical theater MFA or a master's in clinical psychology. And I took the psychology route and popped out as a therapist. And I've been doing that ever since. But then, another train wreck. I married a woman from Venezuela, the worst thing that ever happened to me, and the best thing, which is my 21-year-old daughter. But that was another death-defying wake-up call. I won't go into that whole story, but suffice to say that I thought that was the solution, and when it wasn't, it was I had to gather the troops together to keep my head above water, and dived into a whole nother level of recovery, and went back to school again. That's what I do. So, I did a PhD in organizational psychology, which was what I was up to at the time, coaching executives, and actually made more money in those days than I ever have. But now I've migrated back to trauma healing and with real recovery philosophies underpinning it all. For some reason I can't. I got out and they pulled me back in, Daryl.
Of course they did, right? I think I love the fact that you're very involved in the 12 steps. I mean, from everything I've gathered, you grew up with the 12 steps, right? Just like I did. And, that was what saved me. That was what kept me from, I wasn't the guy that went back to school. I tried to get away from school, ever since I was a little kid, and whatever I could do to sort of sidestep the school thing. But I got my criminal justice degree and had nothing to do with criminal justice my entire life. I was probably closer to the criminal side than the justice side, and that worked however it worked. But I guess I'm fascinated by the integration, or at least my thought of what that could be, the integration of the psychologist part and the 12-step part, and how you marry those things and how they work for what you do.
So many juicy topics. You just turned this into a 4-hour podcast, but I'll do my best to just respond concisely. The first thing I want to say is there's a dynamic that I've been curious about lately. It's the whole idea about who. It's sort of here's a little trivia question for you. Who has what profession has the most has the skill set that correlates the most with a criminal?
Which profession? I'm going to go with therapist.
I'm going to go with cop.
Yeah, right.
In order to catch a criminal, you got to
think like one.
You got to be you got to have that in you.
Yeah.
All right. So here's trivia question number 2. What profession do you think probably matches up with personality aspects as what most correlates with what profession with a crazy person?
Oh, therapist for sure, without a doubt. Yeah.
I've got to practice this trivia question better, but
I can see that, and I can see the cop and criminal thing. I mean, that just is what it is.
Yeah, I'm nuts. So how'd you get into this, Bob? I'm nuts. And I found out some stuff along the way from being nuts, right? It's very similar to what Roland H., who you know about, but maybe your listeners don't all know about, this guy that went to see Carl Jung in the 30s. And Roland was a very wealthy dude, and he's going to go see the very best psychiatrist in the world. At the time, Jung was considered that guy. And Jung saw him a few times and essentially said, "I can't help you. I've never seen anybody recover that had problems like you do." And then, Roland H. was one of the founders of the Oxford Group, which was the precursor to AA. In other words, the punchline of that is Jung said, "Hey, you got to find somebody that understands you, brother." You have to sit in a room with somebody that truly understands you, so that you can hear yourself in that other person. That's your only chance, is to be with other people who have been through it and will share their experience, strength, and hope with you. And then you'll do the same thing. You'll keep yourself sober and somewhat healthy by doing that with other people. Now, it sounds too simple for the clinical world, right? They want something much more intellectual and complex, but they haven't found anything that will intervene on addiction, or really has the clinical world found anything to intervene much on trauma, right? They have a lot of great ideas to calm it down, but not necessarily to heal it. Community-based healing for trauma is much more effective than a lot of the clinical intervention. So it works exactly the same as addictions. That was my experience. I was nuts. I had to put myself with other crazy people. Some people that I send to 12-step programs, they say, "Oh, well, those people, I can't, that turned me off." Yeah. Well, you're seeing yourself, pal. And,
right.
And the other thing is, there's a bunch of crazy people in there. You got to find a couple of people that you connect with. And because a lot of people run away from there saying, "It didn't work for me." Right?
100%. No, I see that all the time. And I'm amazingly, I see that more frequently than I guess. Well, I shouldn't say that. You can guess, because I look at recovery the same way I look at anything else in life where a person wants to be successful, right?
Yeah.
In the business world, it's going to be, somewhere between, and I don't mean to, make it sound too dire, but somewhere between 1% and 5% are going to be really successful. And I think in recovery, it's probably not too dissimilar. Now, a lot of people can get sober. A lot of people can stay away from the drinking and the drugs for a period of time. But unless I change the mechanism, right? I mean, that's what it takes. It takes changing the mechanism.
Well, I get some good arguments. I stay away from this topic pretty much in the forums that you and I are on, just because people that aren't on the path have their opinions, and I'm really not that interested.
Agreed.
There's a guy named Mark Houston started a lot of treatment centers here in Central Texas, and he was a really wise dude. One thing he said is, "I'm not interested in your ideas of an experience you've never had." So that's one truth. But for me, another one is that I won't get an argument from you on this, but believe me, people want to argue this point. 12-step recovery has 100% success rate for people that work the program.
Yep.
Fully.
Yep.
And almost nobody works the program fully.
Right.
So the numbers look bad, yes, but they look great for the people that have actually dug in, actually got a sponsor who has been around a while and had started doing the step work. What we mean by that is there is a lot of writing involved to dredge our unconscious material. It's not just sitting around in meetings smoking cigarettes and, saying, calling ourselves names. No, there is a lot of deep, and then you do the same thing with someone else. If you do that whole process, it is very hard to not recover.
Right. You would. You'd be working really hard to not recover if you did the work. I know we boil it down to trust God, clean house, help others, right? I mean, that seems to be the sort of the steps divided by 4, so it leaves us 3 steps. But is that something that you bring into your other work or into your workshops or? Yeah.
Well, I want to answer the question you asked a little bit earlier, which is related to that, but you brought up the God topic. So I don't know who's listening to your podcast, Daryl, but somebody will say, "Oh, here we go. It's a religious shit now."
I don't care.
I know. But for me, it's just shorthand. It's just shorthand. I use the term God, but I don't have it like locked on like a lot of folks do from the religious angle. For me, it's just, okay, thanks, God. And what I really mean is reality. I'm trying, my prayer, here's my prayer. Please, God, let reality descend upon me. And let me see reality within me. That's the only prayer I have. I want more reality. And reality to me is this thing they call God. But it doesn't really matter. You can make God the doorknob, right? But just don't be telling me what color that doorknob needs to be or what kind of so that's the beauty of 12-step recovery. If you really listen to what's going on there, nobody is telling you what you need to think. It's just the opposite of what most people think. All right, so that's one thing. The other thing I wanted to respond to is there's these 2 worlds, and any of your listeners that are either deeply in the 12-step world or are deeply in the clinical world, one or the other. Some people don't give a shit about either one. They're just trying to navigate the life, right? But some of us are deeply entrenched in one or the other of those. It's very difficult to be deeply involved in both at the same time for this reason. A lot of people in 12-step recovery will say, get over it. Just don't drink, or just don't use, or just don't be codependent, or just don't choose an alcoholic. That's Al-Anon. They all have that, just stop that behavior, which is pretty good idea, right? If it's going to kill you. It's not, and that's the reason for these programs, not to do a lot of deep inner child healing transformation. No, that's not what it's for. It's to keep you sober. So that sort of hard-ass stop drinking, get a sponsor, work the steps thing is very valuable. And it may be considered not trauma-informed. although we do look at our character problems and the things that need to transform. So it's really hard to superimpose that on the trauma healing stuff where it's all about looking at our past, right? It looks like we're blaming our stuff on the past, which doesn't work in either school, right? The blaming stuff has to stop. Right. But it's really difficult to bring both of those things together. But the thing is, after you get sober, after you're working, there's only one thing left to do, and that's heal the wounds underneath the surface, right? And so we have to find ways to be able to, from the clinical world or the healing world or the therapeutic world, to be able to see the beauty of 12-step recovery. It actually works to help people calm down their nervous system and stop self-medicating. Wow, what a gift. And now if 12-step recovery can look at the trauma world and say, wow, there is a way to heal without blaming and to get that stuff out of our body, because all of the trauma is lodged in our body. And we're not going to get it out by just sitting in a 12-step room or even by the writing that happens there. It takes a lot of other work, which we could talk about on another day, but that's my response to how to hold them both. That's the best, and it's the best long-term relapse prevention is to heal our old stuff. So,
yeah, without a doubt. And when I first started coming around, I've never been, clinically. I mean, I've done therapy and things like that, and I've, whatever, over the course of a few decades, a lot of stuff has happened, and whatever's happened, it seems to be working. I'm similar with the whole God thing. I don't even ask. All I say is thank you, and that's it. And I wake up in the morning with a smile on my face. Like that's my definition of, is it working or is it not working? Do I want to face the day or do I not want to face the day? So, I'm a little more simple in terms of my overall, just how I perceive these things. And, the 12 steps, I did all that work. I did that work for, a long time. And I guess it always continues, but not in the same form because I became very interested in a lot of the, philosophies and Eastern thought and, just things where you just keep feeding the machine. That's kind of how I looked at it, feeding the machine. And you mentioned sponsors, that was the turning point for me in my life at that time was having a sponsor. And there's several things that I was told and taught, but one of the things that he said to me was, as I was, wrestling and fighting and, growing up in an environment where, if you're not bleeding out, you're not hurt, and, rub some dirt on it and walk it off and all that sort of thing. And so I'm wrestling through my life, and Bud was his name. He said to me, Daryl, when you stop fighting, the fighting stops. And so that little seed lodges in there, right? Like you get that little seed. I don't know what it means. It's kind of like saying to somebody, just stay sober or just love yourself or whatever, right? You got to figure out all that stuff. Hearing it is one thing, but then the experience of it, as that quote that you mentioned earlier, which I loved, don't try to tell me about something that you haven't experienced or whatever that was. Yeah. That was perfect. And so anyway, we just, we go on and I have a faith, which is probably aclinical, if I can use that term, where I feel like, and my life has been led. Like I just feel like I'm being led, and I for whatever reason I know what to do next, and that sort of thing. And it's so interesting to me, and it's so beautiful to me, and that's where a lot of the gratitude comes from. In terms of just waking up and knowing that everything's cool, and regardless of what's going on.
Yeah. And that's the result, right? That's the result of doing. Why should I do the work? Well, how free do you want to be? They say, right?
Right.
It's not necessary. It's not required. Some parole person would require something, but for the most part, it's not required. You can be miserable if you want. In fact, you can. We say in the program, You know, you can come and check it out for 90 days. If it doesn't work, we'll refund your misery.
Right.
But, you know, there's a lot of folks in recovery who are still either at least mildly miserable and marching through the day, not always waking up glad to be marching through the day, you know. And this is a precious life, man. We only get one that I know of for sure. Somebody could maybe somebody knows something different than that. But for me right now, I want to be in this one.
Right.
And, you know, my trauma did not cause my addiction. However, I'm pretty sure I started using to try to feel better, right? And then it makes you wonder, why didn't he feel good? Well, this you can call it whatever you want, but I call it trauma or conditioning or the ruises and the four agreements, which you may have stumbled into. Yes or no? Yes?
Yeah.
They call it domestication. And then we could call it indoctrination. I don't care what we call it. But when we were kids, we came into this world kind of clean, pretty clean, most of us.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then the shit happened. And for some of us, some really intense shit happened. And for other folks, it was more subtle. And a lot of us would say, well, I'm from a good family. I don't have trauma. Oh, okay, thank you. That's a non sequitur. The two don't have anything to do with each other, especially when it comes to enmeshment, meaning either you had to like grow up too quick or become a tough guy when you were a little vulnerable boy. Like that's
Right.
part of my story. Or entertain people to keep the chaos down, or we had to be the good kid or the bad kid, or somebody had to do the acting out to balance out the system. We're all from this organism that tried to keep it in balance. If there was somebody who was if there was somebody who was addicted, then there was somebody enabling and a really nice person to off balance the black sheep or whatever. So a lot of times in dysfunctional families, we become someone other than who we are. This is called enmeshment. This is called trauma of sorts. And to not be ourselves for extended periods of time, to not be able to express our emotions authentically is traumatic. And then we get in the rhythm of that, and then we're 40 years old saying, I wonder why I'm not living the life I want to live. And especially for those of us that start medicating the underlying restlessness and irritability and discontent, right? And then we tamp it down, and then we need a little more to keep it tamped down until we have a train wreck, and then hopefully we get sober and start healing the old wounds. And ultimately, the gift of recovery is to calm down the nervous system enough to be able to look at that little inner child, that inner the kid within all of us who is hurting in there and needs our support. I know that's kind of touchy-feely shit right there. A lot of people don't want to stay with me on that one, but
whatever.
Yeah,
that's great. I love it because when you said that, what came into my brain was one of the worst things I had to admit at some point, because I wanted to be a tough guy. I wanted to be, a badass. I wanted to be Rambo. I wanted to be all this and that. But the realization that I came to that really sucked was I was a scared little kid. I was a 6'4.5", 225 pound scared little kid.
Yeah.
And that sucks. That sucks to come to that realization. But then again, when you come to that realization, there's an opportunity, right? Like that's where the opportunity comes in, because I've allowed myself to know that that's true, like you said.
Yeah, but that's step one. That sucks. What a piece of shit that is that I'm a kid walking around in an adult body. All right, that's phase one. I'm making this up right now. All right, phase two is, well, what does that kid want? Phase three is have a conversation with that kid. Phase four is realize that little kid is more us than the adult. What's that phrase we like to use? When we're being phony, imposter syndrome. Then this imposter that we've been trying to. Suddenly we realize that this kid is authentic inside of us. And this kid is the golden child within us. It's in every religion, right? The golden child, Muhammad, Christ, whatever. It's a metaphor. It's an archetype that we all have within us. And it's the one that's most creative, most free, most authentic. So we go from, oh, I got this little kid, and I'm acting like a kid. And then we learn how to love that kid and let that kid be our guiding force. The exact opposite.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm not from the clinical side, so I'm not privy to, just some of the explanations and definitions and that kind of thing. But I know that my scared little kid was real, and I carried that with me for a long time. And there's still pieces of that scared little kid in there. But at this point in life, I'm able to, just say, it's all right. Don't worry about it. We're going to do this anyway. And
I'll bet that little kid helped you write that book. That little kid, the teenager, helped you write the subtitle. I'll guarantee that.
I didn't start swearing until I was at least in first grade.
That's right. But was there a time when you wouldn't have been that kind of authentic or real or whatever, or playful?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, in public, right? You would have tried to look like you were more professional or some shit.
Right.
The kid doesn't care about that. He just wants to play mostly. That's how you and I got together. I guarantee you that. We've decided, all right, that line in the big book of AA, if you don't like AA or you don't like any of that stuff, that's fine. But there's a couple of interesting things in there for life. And one of them took me about 25 years to find. I was reading that book and it was in my life for 25 years before I heard that line that said, we absolutely insist on enjoying life, right? I knew you were going to nod your head. And that's where it says we're not a glum lot. It's on that same page. In other words, what I glean from that is any of us that are built the way we are, we better have something fun and interesting going on in our life. So it's not just get sober, work the program. We better have something meaningful going on in our life to replace all of that wacko shit we used to do. It's okay to have fun. It's okay to have a blast. It's okay to get emotional hits from our life. Sometimes I come to the page, in other words, writing all this stuff. I'm prolific these days. I'm writing my ass off, and it's almost like a love affair. I'm almost have I can't wait to get them right. It's like, come on, sweetie.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
I'm with you. And the hard part for me is that I don't get. The first book was easy because I didn't have shit going on. I'm like, okay, I'm semi-retired. I'm just, I'm kind of doing my thing. We after COVID, we sold some properties and business and blah, blah, blah. And I skedaddled down here to Georgia. And so the question was, what are we going to do? And my wife was like, well, I'm kind of scared. I don't like this. And I'm like, something will show up. And now, the author thing, and my wife's got her thing, and she's completely embroiled in what she does, and she's loving it every single day. And which is really cool. But I guess that's, there's got to be an element of, for me, just, faith that things are going to continue to roll. And the interesting thing that, we absolutely insist, I think I don't know if the original quote, we absolutely insist on having fun, I think was the original. Now I think they changed to we absolutely insist on enjoying life. But I heard that, and I'm like, a long time ago, and I'm like, I'm just really not having fun. I'm going to try to have fun. I'll go do some stuff that I think is fun, but I'm not really having fun. This kind of sucks, you know? But it's one of those things where a seed gets planted, and then I start to allow myself to do that. And it might take a long, long time, right? To actually be having fun and be enjoying life.
Yeah, that's so. Now you've just turned the corner to the vulnerability topic. Bump, bump, bump.
Damn it.
Do you have any sound effects on? Hey, let's see if my thing is working here. No, I don't have it turned on. Let me see. I can't do it on your platform, but I could have rain on Zoom. I could have rain coming down.
Oh, seriously? Oh, wow. I got to figure
But
that one
okay,
out.
so now we're on the vulnerability. You've just turned the corner to the vulnerability topic, right? So for some of us, anger is pretty easy, right? That's the top. That's the top one that comes out, right? Resentments and
I can do that one.
But the one underneath the anger is tough for a lot of us guys, especially grief, right? And grief is the healing waters. If I can get down in there and feel that grief and let the tears come for a while, there is a joy that comes forward,
Cleanse.
right? It's just like not any. Like I bet if we started talking about that granddaughter of yours, I get you down in there quick. So right. So and the other one that's kind of hard for a lot of guys is to own the fear and to feel it and express it and say I'm scared, right? Especially us tough guys who are told I ain't scared of nothing, right?
Right.
So we know this. We resist being vulnerable emotionally. This is a huge thing for everybody in recovery, for anybody who's just marching around in the as a human, right? We're trying to hide our vulnerability, and vulnerability is the doorway to freedom. It is. It takes way more courage, right? We've heard this, way more courage to be vulnerable than it does to be tough. I mean, tough is fucking easy.
Right.
It's like I can go to the bar room and do tough. Now,
get hit. Yeah.
Yes, being authentic and real and genuine and emotionally open, now that takes some courage because you're putting yourself at risk. Somebody's going to, say something and then you're going to get butt hurt. And no, let's just stay tough. Okay. So, but but you just turned the corner to this conversation, which for some people being playful and having fun is even more difficult. It's even more vulnerable to, because I was told, get serious, mister. Pull up your something or other and get serious. And that message comes, oh, wait a minute, I can't be playful and just,
straighten up.
I can't straighten up and fly right, actually, it's a song title. And I think my dad used to say that to me. So and those messages are embedded in us from our experiences, our conditioning, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'm about to maybe make up some lyrics and then, okay, well, maybe that's not right. And maybe I'll get criticized. So I hold myself back. See, it's not the terror and the horror and the giant volcanic problems in our life that hold us back. What holds us back is that quiet fear of being seen. That quiet fear of making a mistake, that quiet fear of being seen in a way where we'll be criticized, and it lives underneath the surface of us and runs the show.
Yeah, no, I definitely get that, and that has been something that has been a lifelong journey, right? Like even you mentioned it with the title, the subtitle, right? And I want to. And there's so many things. I mean, we could talk about that for 7 hours. There was a time, and I'm just going to mention this because you mentioned sort of letting that cleanse happen. And I'm, maybe 2-3 times a year, Father's Day. There's certain times a year where I'll just sort of connect. But we have a deck out here that overlooks, some mountains, and we see a huge amount of sky. And sometimes I'll just wake up at 3 a.m. and be like, you know what? I'm just going to get up. And I'll go outside and I'll sit on the deck and I'll watch for shooting stars. And my record so far has been 9 in an hour, which is really cool. But sometimes I'll just start to, and I don't know any other word for it than commune. I'll commune with my parents who are both deceased. And I'll just talk to them, and sometimes I'll just start bawling, and it's the most cleansing, wonderful, cool, just unbelievable experience. And anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there because you touched on that topic, and it was beautiful.
I'm glad you have that for yourself, Daryl. And we all do it different, right? That whole thing about also, one thing I want to say is that you said you don't know much about clinical stuff. Me either, and I don't want to. Most of the stuff that I'm talking about here has come from community-based healing, and I can tell if anybody wants to reach out to me, I can tell you what I mean by that. I don't mean clinical in a psychiatric or pharmaceutical or even psychotherapeutic setting. I'm talking about a community-based, deep healing, transformation, being in the presence of people of depth to take me down in there and find my grief. So that's one thing. But I also just wanted to say we all do it differently, right? It is very difficult for me to find that grief pocket when I'm by myself. I think there's probably more people that can do that. For me, when I start crying by myself, it's very short, and sometimes it's not. The release isn't there for me, but other people can do it. It seems like you have that gift, and I have to be in a circle of people who are also doing it, and then I'm in there, and then I can dive in. It's like we're just all built differently, and that's an interesting thing for me lately. What is it about us that changes it? Because everybody's grief process is there's no one size fits all.
Yeah, I'm reminded of, I don't know, a couple of years ago, my wife and I are watching America's Got Talent, and there's this family on there whose mom has cancer, and she's, headed down toward, potentially not making it very long, and stage 4 kind of stuff. And I swear I couldn't take it. I left the room and I started bawling, and my wife comes around the corner and one of my sons, I think, and he's like, they're just like, what's going on? And I was like, oh, America's Got Talent freaking nailed me, like nailed me to the wall.
It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And it takes practice too. I will say that. Say that. I've been doing it so long now. When my tears come, I pretty much, can just let them come. But I'll say, around family, and unless I have a good container that's like built for that, I might, pull it up and not show everybody. It's not necessary to. Because just walking down the street crying our eyes out, because somebody's going to project craziness onto that. So fortunately, I've chosen. I'll just do a little shout out for people that are ready to maybe if you've got a giant mountain of grief under there that needs its finding, and usually it's already finding its way to the surface, like it cracks in inappropriate times, or sometimes watching movies or whatever it is, and if we know we have that under there, it's probably driving certain blockades to the life that we want to live, right? So in your case, I can almost tell you've got a little bit of that, but you're also got so much freedom going on in your life. You're like in the flow, Daryl. But there's some folks that it is the definition of depression. The definition of depression in this world, my world, which is the only world, I listen to clinical shit sometimes, but I discard most of it. Most depression is unresolved trauma, meaning it's not, people think, oh, you're depressed, you're sad. No, you're depressed and not feeling your sadness. You're depressed and not allowing your sadness to come forward because you don't have a container for it. And it feels like it's going to kill you if you do let it come forward. So we find ways to suppress it, and then there's certain industries that have found out how to help you do that, and either the pharmaceutical, drugs, or alcohol industries will happily help you tamp that shit down. But if somebody's ready, if you don't have the substance abuse thing going on, that's where you have to start. If you're self-medicating seriously, you got to grab a hold. You got to call Daryl Dittmer, and he'll tell you what the fuck to do. All right. So if you don't have that, though, there's another group called Adult Children of Dysfunctional Families. It's all about healing, inner child healing work, and accessing that wound beneath the surface that's driving it all. And it's free, and they're all over the world, and I have a lot of programs that are low cost and free or by donation also. And I also can refer people to places where you can get healing. We don't have to drag this big bag of unresolved shit around. It's not necessary. And it also causes world war.
Right.
So stop doing it.
Knock it off before they start launching freaking bombs. And yeah, no, 100%. So I'm loving the conversation, but I do want to touch on. Stop doing shit you don't want to do.
Yeah, we must have gone to the same title generator or something. What is yours? It's we stopped fighting.
Yeah, when I stopped fighting, the unexpected joy of getting my head out of my ass.
Right. We must have gone to the same title generator, but actually, that's the title of the last book I wrote. Stop doing shit you don't want to do. A straightforward guide to letting go of unresolved trauma. I didn't write the last one, but I did have to. People like the topic. Stop doing. Who doesn't want to stop doing shit they don't want to do? Everybody. So it gets people's attention. And but then I had to be honest with them. There's a percentage of them that will put the book down immediately if they actually know what it's about. It's not some guy that, just quit your job, just leave the relationship, stop doing that. No. What's driving it is the roots of it. And even if we did stop doing the shit, you're going to be right back in another relationship or another job that resembles it, right? Unless we do the deep transformation work. So that book started out with the title, really. I don't think that's probably recommended, but okay. So the reason is that's where it starts. If we catch ourselves doing shit over and over and over, I don't like this. That's the doorway to healing. But most of us don't do that. We just get tougher, and we think somehow that being more disciplined or more productive or gather more shit or something is going to make it okay. But, that first sign, it's a beautiful sign. I don't want to be doing this. Thank you. And what's the old, here's the punchline. What's the old message that you're carrying about yourself? Well, I have to. I've got to be better. I'm trying to make myself better. And when did that start? Well, when I was a kid, my dad was I could tell when I really worked hard, even if I didn't want to do it, he loved it so you've been doing this for a while. Yeah, we got to go back to where we grabbed a hold of these messages that told us we have to do some shit we don't want to be doing, and then the healing begins.
Yeah, and it so characterizes, I think, both of our lives, right, and so many people's lives. And I know for me, it's at this point in life, it's what am I gonna head off at the pass? Because there's a lot of shit that I shouldn't be doing and shit that I shouldn't do, and generally I don't do it anymore. Which is wonderful, and that's, I guess, just being around for a little bit and starting to learn that it hurts and it sucks to do shit that I don't want to do. But I love that title, and I think that's a great title. For whatever reason, I know we were putting our books up around the same time, and I was like, that's a really cool title. And when I looked at yours, I'm like, oh man, I got to get something in here that's going to be cool like that. But
well, we're both kind of on the same track, trying to bring the message of let's get real here. Let's whatever it is that's keeping you from being who you are. Let's find a way to cough those that's the way I talk about, cough those hairballs, those old hairballs that are not ours. And most of it's, we could do another one on shame. We'll do another. Shame is a big topic that is running. It's a result of trauma. When we were little kids, and this is just the preview for our next one, all right? When we were little kids, we were like a sponge for everything that happened around us. And if there was a little shit show going on of some kind, which most families have, the kid does not say, I think mom probably could use a therapist. I hope we can get a nice referral for mom. And no, and dad could really use that 12-step program that we've heard of. And let's see if we can get him to start those meetings. No, a kid does not say that, right? When there's a shit show, what does a kid say? Who's causing it? Right? They think they're causing it themselves, right? So this is also known as shame.
And you go along with the program because that's what you know as a kid.
Well, that's how we know. What we're trying to do is manage everything. If I do this, it'll get a little better. I got that little look right there. If I act this way, I'll get that nice look from dad, and mom won't be as mad. Okay, this is who I am, and now I'm this way, and that's trying to manage the shit show. And because we think when we're kids, we're the center of the universe, and we think we're causing it all. So we adjust ourselves and develop shame that we're at fault. And then we carry it into our adult lives. And underlying, most of us are not conscious of it, we're making choices based on these old messages that are shame-driven from our trauma. I know it's just, when I hear myself saying all that, it sounds way too complex than it actually is. Because actually all we need to do is access that grief pocket below and just let it drain. And then we come back to the world and we're more authentic. But, some people need the whole story. And trauma is a very minimally understood set of dynamics, I think.
I never thought of, the work that I've done over the years is coughing up the hairballs. But shit, man, that's it. That's what it is. I've been coughing them up.
Yeah.
For a long time. And, it's, you had mentioned, and I think this is so true about the, this stuff being trapped in our bodies. And I couldn't agree more. And my body has had the absolute shit kicked out of it, of my own making, but also just, stuff. Right. And it's interesting because I think I commented the other day on something that you put out there, about holding it in our body. And I said, well, yeah, I get a lot of massages, and I do. Cause I've got knots that are this freaking big on my shoulders, and
I think we carry it in our body, and, it's just, for guys like you and me, probably at this point, it's not life and death, but it's an onion. That's the best metaphor I've found for it. It's an onion. And if I'm willing to peel another layer, I'm going to get more freedom. Another layer, I'm going to get more freedom. And some of it has to do with the somatics conversation that's become popular. I was into doing trauma healing before the trauma thing became popular. I was doing somatic healing before the somatic thing. But I love seeing it come onto the screen as being, what's his name? Vanderkolk wrote the book, The Body Keeps the Score, right? That's the popular one out there now that essentially says it ain't up here. We say that in 12-step recovery. We've said that for years, right? Your first thought is probably not your best friend. Our intellect is what got us into trouble. It's not going to help us out very well. The solution is in the body, and those knots, and that stiffness I have in my neck. It has a message for me if I'll listen to it. What am I carrying on my back? That's the whole science of bioenergetics, which we use extensively at my workshops, the Deep Waters experience. I don't know if you've sniffed around that stuff or not, Daryl, but I do a workshop.
No, yeah. I haven't.
It's a 3-day workshop called the Deep Waters Experience. If anybody wants to go to deepwatersrecovery.org, that's the website for that. Powerful stuff, man. I got a hold of this with another organization a couple of decades ago, and man, it's the best theater on the planet to see people get their lives back.
Wow. That's very cool. I'm writing that down.
Yeah. I might have to drag you out here from Georgia. I got a couple of people in Atlanta that are on my staff, and they're actually this whole online thing that you and I are doing. I'm just stunned. Do you do many spaces?
I've done some, and I was doing one on a Saturday mornings, but it was recovery based, and it just didn't really go, and maybe it was the time. the
Well,
timing of it. But
keep me informed, or maybe we'll do a one-off or something and try to find a good time together. But what's stunning to me is the reach, right? Because of that. And when I say spaces, anybody that's listening to this that is not on the twit, I call it the twit, but now I guess they're calling it X. You can curate it's not the superficial thing that I used to think it is. I've turned it into a healing process for myself and for the people that I connect with. That's how you and I are connecting there. We're not having a bunch of political arguments. You can curate the algorithm to be about whatever is important. And right now, I've got a bunch of people just on this topic that you and I are talking about today. But the reach is amazing. I got a guy from Singapore and 2 or 3 people from California coming to Texas for these workshops just because of in England and all over Europe. It's been an amazing connection opportunity.
That's really cool. That's really cool. Yeah, no, that's wonderful. I'd love to do a space together sometime. Just talk it up like we're doing now. We could do that anytime. So yeah, I would love that. And so speaking of where do we find Dr. Bob Beare?
Yeah, the website for all the online programs and videos and the newsletter and all that is bobbeare.com. Beare with an E. And then for the workshops and for a lot of resources, for 12-step resources and healing resources that are low cost, the nonprofit website is deepwatersrecovery.org. Deepwaters with an S. Deepwatersrecovery.org. I like good titles, like Deep Waters came first before the programs do. Let's dive into the deep waters, Daryl.
I love that. I love that. I always used to be told that in business, when I was a kid coming up in business, and people were like, yeah, you ready to get into the deep end of the pool? I'm like, yeah, why not? Let's go. And even though I'm scared shitless and I freeze up, I have anxiety attacks, all that sort of stuff. I'm like, yeah, let's go. And whatever. It worked out great, but I love deep waters. There was a guy that was probably 2 years sober when I was 0 years sober. And he used to say, when you're sort of in the blue channel, that's kind of how he looked at it, when you're grooving and doing all right at any given time. And so deep waters kind of brings that back up for me, that blue channel.
The blue channel. Cause I don't want to launch too, I think we're headed toward the end here, but my brother got stage 4 cancer 4 years ago. And it was devastating for all of us. Oh my God, is he going to make it? But he got the surgery and everything, and he's okay. But during that worst time, he said to me, I said to him, I want to get a boat someday. He said, when are you going to do it? You're going to do it after you're dead? So you always want to listen to a guy with stage 4 cancer. Whatever he says, just do it.
Right. No, I love that. Yeah, there's an urgency there, right? There's an urgency there without a doubt, which and I've done a lot of that lately, which I love, and I know we're coming to the end, but we'll just pick this up at some point again. But just looking at life from that perspective. I mean, I look at myself right now, and I'm 58 freaking years old, and not that that's old, but it becomes a little more finite, right? As we continue to go, and we've been doing a lot of stuff, and I've been doing it my whole life. I haven't scripted a damn thing, but just, hey, let's think about moving to a place in the mountains. Let's get rid of these, these businesses and these properties and whatever, and just do it. Just dump it. Just move on. Just, and I hate to say just do it, but that's what it is. It is, stop thinking about it. Stop. What are the pros and the cons, and do the Ben Franklin, this and that and all that kind of stuff. Like, just move forward. Take that first step.
Yeah. And what helps me, and that is sort of a pull up your bootstrap, just do it Nike thing. I know we both know that's bullshit all by itself. Right. But you and I both have so much support in our lives. We got to be around other people I mean, that's another cliche thing. You know, you want to be around, you want to get rich, hang out with rich people. You want to get good recovery, hang out with people with good recovery. You got to get into the rhythm of whatever it is that you want. You want to write a musical, you better get in a workshop with a bunch of people. You want to be a healer, you better get yourself in some healing circles. So yes, just do it and put yourself in the presence of people who are doing it. Right? There's a 1-2 punch there.
Right, 100%. And that's what I've loved about mentors my entire life, because I search out the people who have their head out of their ass so it can help me get mine out of my ass in any given undertaking.
Yeah,
right?
it's really, and eye contact is important, so it's really hard when your head is like popped up into you. You know that sound when you pull it out? Does your book make that sound when you open?
It does. Yeah, right at the halfway mark. Yeah. It's been really a pleasure, Bob. I'm loving the fact that we did this, and we'll do more, I'm sure. And let's do spaces and whatever else comes up. Oh, you know, the thing I want to talk about next time with you, and I saw this. I haven't read it yet, but I saw it today, and it's your newsletter. I'm so misunderstood. Learning to not give a shit.
Yeah, I had learning to not give a shit dash in a good way at the end, but my editor said you don't need that. Just leave the subtitle there. Yeah, it's just about learning how to use those moments of being misunderstood and criticized as an opportunity to look at our old wounds and heal them. And then we look up, and for some reason they're not criticizing us anymore. And even when they do, it doesn't sting in the same way. So now you've just read my newsletter.
No, 100%. I appreciate. I'm going to read it after we get done with this, but I wanted to comment on that because I love the title and I love the little, the subtitle there. So cool stuff, man. I think we align in so many ways. So I appreciate you. I appreciate your wisdom. Appreciate all that you've shared today, and we'll do it again very soon.
Yeah, I love the connection, Daryl. Let's stay connected, and thanks so much for having me on.
For sure, Bob. Thank you.